Okay, welcome to block number 3, and good afternoon, or whatever actually the time in your time zone is. In this block, we have 3 presentations. We look at some of the challenges in cooperation between other SAR organizations or organizations taking part in operative action. We look at the communications program related to COVID-19, and then we look at the commercial activities of a search and rescue organization. As before, if you have questions for the speaker, you can write the questions in chat, and we will answer the questions at the end of this block. So once all the 3 presentations have been made, then we allocate some time to answer your questions. And a reminder for the speakers, please keep your microphone off when you're not talking. Right, so let's put the presentation on. Sorry about that. It was in the middle of the presentation, but now it's at the beginning, and so I'll give the floor to our first speaker, Phil Bostock. He is the head of the international liaison at the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency in the UK, and he's talking about the challenges that there might be working with other SAR facilities. So, Phil, please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Phil Bostock. I am the head of international liaison for Her Majesty's Coast Guard in the United Kingdom, and I'm also the operational lead for our overseas search and rescue capability projects. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I would like to talk to you about some of the challenges that we face when working with others, and this context, what the IMO refers to as other search and rescue facilities. So facilities that carry out search and rescue either as a secondary or tertiary duty. To set the scene, this map shows where HM Coast Guard at the moment is involved in developing search and rescue capabilities. You can see the majority of areas are in the Caribbean and in the South Atlantic, and these are our overseas territories that the UK is responsible for. But we also do some work in Eastern Africa, as you see in the blue boxes, and Kenya and the Seychelles, where we assist regional services with their search and rescue capacities. Bearing in mind that today's event is a regional European event, you may note that none of the places I talk about is actually in Europe, but I feel from personal experience that some of these challenges are applicable not only to Europe, not only to the world, but also to the European environment. For the purpose of this presentation, when I'm talking about other search and rescue facilities, I'm referring to facilities as defined in Volume 1 of the International Aeronautical and Maritime Search and Rescue Manual, IMSA, which says that other SAR facilities, in establishing a search and rescue service, states can use the fullest extent possible existing facilities established for tasks not connected with search and rescue. Existing facilities often may be suitable for search and rescue operations with minimal modifications, added equipment or crew training. By providing training, installing some low-cost equipment, and integrating all facilities into the search and rescue system, an efficient search and rescue service can be set up with limited need for dedicated search and rescue units. In our context, these are assets of the police, customs, immigration or border forces, Coast Guard, fishery protection, or joint units of some description. Coming from a UK perspective, and with HM Coast Guard being a primarily a search and rescue service dealing with civil, aeronautical, and maritime search and rescue, I've come across three main challenges when working with other SAR facilities as part of our activities. First one is trying to establish the demand for search and rescue due to a lack of data and statistics, and the fact or perception that there is not enough search and rescue for a full-time search and rescue unit. The second is dealing with conflicting priorities between search and rescue and other Coast Guard functions. And the third is to understand the mindset, the perspective and perception of, or the attitudes towards search and rescue of the responders involved. So looking at the first point, establishing the demand. With the services we work with, we often find that different agencies keep separate records or statistics. For example, the police is one set of statistics, customs is another one. They are all classified information and can't be shared. Agencies are using different methods of record keeping that range from a paper log to an Excel spreadsheet or to a fully blown record management system, but there's no mechanism of exchanging or sharing that data. A lack of a separate categorization for search and rescue incidents. By that I mean, for example, the police using crime classifications for the instance. So if they do a search and rescue that involves some criminal elements, you would not find this as a search and rescue incident in the database. The prevalence of empirical search and rescue data. That's quite an interesting one for me. Normally the conversations start with, we have those incidents all the time, or we had this incident a few years back, which is very difficult to quantify or qualify as what it actually involved, how often does it take place, and so on. And in more general terms, a lack of a holistic approach to search and rescue, or what I would refer to as search and rescue in silos by different agencies. Looking at the second challenge, dealing with conflicting priorities between search and rescue and other functions. You might have seen this, and across Europe we have what is called the Coast Guard functions. So there's 11 defined functions that Coast Guards or maritime services carry out around the waters. And in many large and developed countries, you have dedicated services for each function, and especially in Europe, you have a lot of services that are dedicated to search and rescue specifically. The agencies we work with normally don't have that luxury. So using the UK example, HM Coast Guard is primarily a search and rescue responder, but also we are looking after vessel traffic management and maritime environmental protection, so counter pollution and salvage incidents. We support other Coast Guard functions such as disaster response, assistance services, and maritime security. And we also support other agencies to deliver their functions. So, for example, the Border Force or the Marine Management Organizations who are looking after customs, immigration, and fisheries operations, respectively. But as I say, in many places, we deal with one service has to carry the majority or all of those functions. The next slide shows what I call the instant response matrix. And this shows that different functions carried out by multi-role services require different skill sets. So the matrix looks at two axes. The first one is the speed of the response, the vertical one, and the horizontal one looks at how standardized or how specialized the skill sets are that are required to carry out that functions. So if you're looking at the orange area, that is for search and rescue, you'll see that search and rescue usually requires a fast but fairly standardized response. By that I mean we have to respond fast to search lives, but we're using established procedures as laid out in IMSA. Crews are trained in how to search for casualties and how to get people out of the water and so on. Other functions such as border and customs control or fisheries, using the blue area, require a less fast response, so they do a lot of routine patrolling and reconnaissance. And then another area in green is accident disaster response or counter pollution incidents. These are usually slower and much more specialized to the complexity of the incidents. However, across the functions, there's also a different speed required within each function. So if you look again at the search and rescue orange area, you will see that the casualty evacuation at the top left corner requires a very fast response, but it's normally very standardized. So we're talking about transporting someone in a helicopter to a hospital, for example. And then it goes down to the right. So, for example, migrant search and rescue in the center there requires a very different skill set to normal search and rescue, and very specialized search and rescue, like underwater search and rescue, requires very specific procedures and very specific skill sets. And it's fairly similar to the other areas. So, for example, a border control or fisheries inspection mission starts very standardized as the patrol mission, but might then escalate to inspection, intercept, and a boarding operation, which again requires more specialist skills and has to be produced at a faster pace. So I think this matrix is quite useful just to show if a agency or a operator operates across multiple disciplines, that there is a common skill set in the center, both common skills and procedures, but there's also the requirement to have specialized skills for each of the functions, and especially for search and rescue to be effective and efficient in that area. This next slide looks at the sequence of functions more than where they overlap. And the challenge here is to recognize that search and rescue is not always the primary type of incident or the primary response required. And again, for a dedicated search and rescue service, that's quite strange to see, because we always go out and rescue people, and we might find something else out later on, but it's not of our concern because we do the search and rescue first and foremost. But for many of the services we work with, it's actually the opposite round, and they look at other functions first. So in the first row, the first example, we have the migrant vessel intercept. That might start with maritime surveillance, so a radar or a AS intercept of a vessel. And firstly and foremost, it's a border control immigration issue. But as we know, migrant vessels are often unseaworthy, overloaded, lacking life-saving equipment, and unsafe to navigate. So this might turn very quickly into a search and rescue incident to make sure that the personnel on board is brought to a place of safety. In the second example, something that turned out as a search and rescue, or in the first place, actually turns out to be involving some drug smuggling. So after search and rescue, it becomes a issue for the law enforcement agencies, and then later on investigations and legal proceedings built onto that. In the third example, an incident involving drug trafficking, as you see there, a boat washed up on the shore, might actually turn out to be a search and rescue incident, because now you have to search for the people who drove the boat or used the boat. And in the fourth example, you see a fishing boat that's been intercepted, and again, it starts off maybe as a fishery inspection, but then results in a search and rescue incident because that boat might have been drifting around for a couple of days without engine, water, or food of the personnel involved. So it's just the difference in perception of where the search and rescue comes in during an incident if you do multiple roles as a responder. And the third issue I want to talk about is the most fascinating for me, and that's talking about the mindset of the responders. So the SAR Convention and ICAO Annex 12 on search and rescue are fairly straightforward. They say the parties shall ensure that assistance can be provided to any person in distress at sea. They shall do so regardless of the nationality, status of the person, or the circumstances in which that person is found. So very straightforward. For the UK, as I say, we are foremost a search and rescue organization. We operate 9 maritime rescue coordination centers and 1 joint rescue coordination center in the UK. We operate a fleet of 22 dedicated search and rescue helicopters, and we work with 3,500 volunteers on the Coast Guard side who do search and rescue for us, as well as with the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, who provide us with around 400 dedicated inshore and all-weather lifeboats for search and rescue. However, the facilities we work with overseas are firstly and foremost law enforcement agencies. So I've done some research on why my perception as a search and rescue responder is different from, for example, someone who's a police officer or an immigration and customs officer. What I found was quite eye-opening for me. On the left, there are some results from a 2006 study where police officers were accompanied by observers over 130 shifts, 8-hour shifts, and the observers found that law enforcement officers form suspicion when they observe something unusual, become curious or otherwise distrustful of an individual. This happened on 75% of encounters with other persons. And the main reason for forming suspicion is the behavior of the suspects, such as avoiding officers or looking nervous in the presence of the officer. That happened in 66% of any encounters they had. If we look at some of the common mission statements that customs and police services use, you'll see on the right there, check immigration status, search vessels and cargo for illicit goods or illegal immigrants, patrol waters, gather intelligence, uphold the law, prevent crime, keep the peace, and so on. As you notice, there's no mention of search and rescue in any of those. I wasn't able to find any research on maritime search and responders and how they approach a search and rescue. So the closest I would find in my research was the ambulance services. So I looked at a study on the left, a 2012 study, which followed 58 UK and 30 US paramedics. And it showed that paramedics identified the key goal and focus of the activities as ensuring the patients in their care were given access to the right treatments in the right setting as quickly as possible. And on the right, you see some of the mission statements from ambulance services, which are save lives and ensure everyone receives the right care wherever they are and whatever they need, and the priorities for themselves, the public, and the patient. As you see there, that is a very different approach or mindset when going to an incident than a law enforcement officer would have. And you can understand that there's a bit of a conflict if you carry out multiple functions at once. And lastly, I looked at what we in the Coast Guard refer to as casualty culture, and that is the ability to put yourself into the position and the mindset of the casualty and how the casualty perceives the rescuer. So the person in distress might react very different to the unit on the left there in the camouflage with the machine guns than to the right, which are in bright orange and looks much more like a search and rescue service. And of course, the person in distress might have a very different approach or different behaviors towards the rescuers, depending on their personal background, which might be anger, stress, or relief, depending on what they're coming from. So these are the three main challenges we face, and what do we do in our capacity building to address those challenges? So I've grouped this here into three categories. So the demand, priorities, and mindset, we can translate into, what is the service primarily dealing with? What are the priorities and functions? And what is their primary purpose? So what mindset is the responder coming from? So what do we do to assist from a search and rescue perspective? Firstly, we help in establishing the risk and demand picture by either carrying out field visits and desk studies, produce a comprehensive search and rescue capability report for the service or the country in question. We assist in the design and establishment of rescue coordination centers and central alerting posts, and advise on the suitability of assets that are either there or being procured on their suitability for search and rescue. And we provide search and rescue administration training and workshops, as well as in-territory or in-country exercises on search and rescue to cover those three areas. I'll talk about each of those in a bit more detail. So the first one we look at is data. So our reviews look at how is search and rescue done in the service or in the country we're talking about. What are the staffing levels? What's the training? What's the equipment? And very importantly, what's the demand? So what is the risk? How many accidents take place? How many incidents? How often do they take place? How complex are they? How many people do they involve there? And so on. And we review a lot of other things like the framework for search and rescue, as in who's doing what, who's legally obliged to do what, does the service meet the international obligations? Are the current practices working and are they up to date and up to speed with international requirements? And we also do discussions with community groups and the public to find out what the public perceives of the search and rescue service. And very interestingly, the perceptions between the responders and the public are often quite far apart on how search and rescue is going in a specific place. On the priority side, I already mentioned it, we look at or assist with procurement of specialist equipment for search and rescue that ranges from radio equipment or AIS to things like specialized stretchers. We review potentially new technologies that can be used, such as, for example, small drones, and we assist with specification and evaluation of SAR equipment and assets. So if a new asset, like a new lifeboat or new boat is being purchased, what does this boat have to be also fit for a search and rescue purpose rather than just law enforcement, interception, and so on. And the last area is the mindsets. Again, the most fascinating for me is how do we get people to see the side of SAR or become to a SAR perspective. So what we do is we deliver targeted training in situ, so with the responders that are on the assets or the coordinators who are coordinating these assets in SAR specific skill sets, so search and rescue coordination, search and rescue communication, how casualties are likely to behave, the risks of engaging with casualties, and so on. We deliver themed regional workshops, so we do them, for example, on SAR administration on what needs to be in place to have a search and rescue function, and that ranges from the human resource element, as in competency frameworks, role profiles, training needs analysis, and all the way to having a national SAR plan and so on that actually puts all that framework together. We facilitate exercises, and that ranges from tabletop exercises to walkthrough or live exercises. And we enable, most crucially, partnership working and exposure to the wider SAR community. And for me, that's the most important point, because only in bringing people together with search and rescue agencies and responders can they actually form those networks and understand more the search and rescue point of view and walk away from the pure law enforcement or fisheries inspection background or whatever background they are primarily from. So I say most important for us is the partnership working. So during the project, we engaged with many stakeholders, and here's just some of them that we have engaged with. Some of those partners include, going from the left there, the UK College of Policing's National Search Centre. We've done training with them in St. Helena on missing persons, especially missing on a coastline, cliffs, and so on, and locating them. The French Coast Guard, and specifically the Maritime Rescue Coordination Center in Martinique in the Caribbean, which looks after a large area of the Caribbean, getting their search and rescue experts to come with us on the training and talk about what they do and how they do search and rescue and what they need from the responders. We've worked with the US Coast Guard and their cruise ship National Center of Excellence and the Mask Rescue Operations Program in the delivery of workshops on mask rescue operations, including tabletop exercises, and 2 walkthrough exercises we've delivered in the British Virgin Islands and in Montserrat. We've worked with the Japan Coast Guard on the review of search and rescue capabilities in Kenya and the Kenya Coast Guard Service. Also in Kenya, we've been working with the British Peace Support Team on supporting maritime security and maritime safety and developing the search and rescue capability in Kenya for the new Kenya Coast Guard Service. We work with the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, supporting our workshops and the overseas territories in search and rescue training. We work with maritime safety authorities, such as the South African Maritime Safety Authority, on SAR cooperation in the South Atlantic. And last but not least, and with very special thanks, we work with the IMRF on delivery on MRO, Mass Rescue Operations workshop with our overseas territories. So a very swift walkthrough on what we see as the 3 main challenges. Of course, I'm very interested to hear from others if they have made similar experiences or have similar challenges. And I hope I can answer any questions in the block following the next 2 presentations. And that's all for me. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm sure this is all going to be shared. So here's my contact details as well for after this conference. And I'll hand back to the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil, very much for an interesting presentation about not only the challenges, but also about some solutions available for working with the others are organizations or facilities. There's already a couple of questions in the chat, but as mentioned, we answer those at the end of this block after all presentations have been done. So we can now move on to the next presentation in this block. That would be Christian Stipodi, who is the head of press and PR at the German Maritime Search and Rescue Service, the Seenotretter, DGZRS. So, Christian, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, from the old Hanseatic town of Bremen. Maybe some of you read about what my Swedish colleague Niklas Jenneby and I wrote in the newsletter, in the IMRF newsletter, about the next topic. But first of all, let's have a look at the first picture I brought with. That's a typical situation many times a year, a typical situation without Corona. This year was completely different for dealing with the media and so on, and that's the topic of the next minutes. First of all, our institution at a glance. We have a long history and we are a modern SIR service. We have 20 search and rescue vessels with daughter boats, 40 boats manned exclusively by volunteers, 55 stations between Borkum in the west and the island of Usedom in the east. And we also run the German MRCC. That's worldwide unique because it's a private one. The MRCC in Germany belongs to our institution. We carry out more than 2,000 search and rescue missions every year. And under our flag, we have 180 professionals and more than 800 volunteers. As in your organizations, around the clock in any weather. Special, not special in Europe, but special worldwide, is that we are a charity supported entirely by voluntary contributions. So let's have a look at COVID-19 in Germany. We went into shutdown in the middle of March. That means that all our fundraising events were cancelled for an unspecific period, like today. We have no open ship events, no visitors on board our rescue units, and as I mentioned first, no press or media on board, because many of our crews live on board day and night on the bigger vessels. And we have no guided tours of our headquarters here in Bremen, which means no look into the MRCC between our glass door, no looks into our shipyard, our repair yard, and no visits in our little sea rescue cinema, how we call it. So that means these are all the ways that we seek to tell our story in normal times were closed. Because of the shutdown, there were no way to get in contact with our friends and supporters on common face-to-face ways. That was our first reaction. Looking for help. But as a result, our public relations department has to develop new ways to actively engage with our supporters and to inspire people to join our team as a donor, thereby converting them to regular supporters. So, what we came up with. First of all, we developed some ideas to fight coronavirus boredom at home. Situations we all know best, especially those of us with little children at home, I assume. We brought up with new coloring pictures for children, not just to download, but to order a little booklet on our website. The aim was to get in contact with the parents. And we earned near 5,000 new addresses within 2 weeks. That was the first success. We gave our supporters new screen backgrounds for parents' smartphones, tablets, and PC screens, downloadable from our media library, also to find against the boredom at home. And we made little videos like the first one I will show you now. I hope it will work. I have to change the section here. We call it Seenotretter Knotenkunde, videos demonstrating how to make different nautical notes.
Moin Moin und herzlich willkommen an Bord des Seenotkreuzers Peter-Löng, Station List auf Sylt. Heute machen wir Knotenkunde. Ich zeige euch den Palsteg. Den Palsteg benötigen wir, um an einem Ende der Leine ein Auge zu
Oh, Christian, the video is not showing.
Es geht los, dazu erzähle ich euch eine kleine Geschichte. Wir machen als erstes einen Teich. Moin Moin und herzlich willkommen an Bord des Seenotkreuzers Peter-Löng, Station List auf Sylt. Heute machen wir Knotenkunde. Ich zeige euch den Palsteg. Den Palsteg benötigen wir, um an einem Ende der Leine ein Auge zu knoten, um dieses an Land auf einen Poller zu bewegen. Es geht los, dazu erzähle ich euch eine kleine Geschichte. Wir machen als erstes einen Teich. Aus diesem Teich kommt eine Schlange, die guckt mal kurz, kriecht unter einem Baum durch und verschwindet wieder im Teich. Fertig ist der Palsteg. Mit dieser Geschichte super einfach nachzumachen. Viel Spaß euch, alles Gute.
Sorry for the short delay at the beginning. Next step was to organize new virtual tours on board our rescue units because there were no chance to visit. So we made it possible to visit it on virtual ways. This is our biggest rescue cruiser on the island of Helgoland, 46 meters, Hermann Marwede. It's a new virtual tour you can find on our website. All of these videos and tours are linked in my presentation. You can download it after this blog. And we also do new virtual tours in videos. Here I have a next example for you.
Oh, was gibt's denn heute zu essen? Geschmorte Zwiebeln mit Leber und Kartoffelpüree.
As you can see, it was a vessel where the crew live on board. This is the next video is from the same vessel, 28 meters, stationed in Cuxhaven at the mouth of the river Elbe. And the next video is from the engine room.
Hier befinden wir uns jetzt im Rudermaschinenraum. Genau über mir befindet sich das Tochterboot. Hier haben wir
Schon sind wir wieder im Maschinenraum.
Das war's auch schon, unser kleinen Führung durch den Maschinenraum. Dann wünsche ich noch einen schönen Tag und bleibt gesund. Tschüss.
And this video starts under the daughter boat. So you can see it is an advantage to do it virtual because it was much closer than a usual visit. We made new YouTube playlists. We call it Seenotretter Classics, Pearls from our film archive.
Also es wird davon gesprochen, dass er 200 Tonnen Feuerwerkskörper an Bord hat. Wisst ihr, wo die gelagert sind? Ja, es soll Achtern sein, also in dem achteren Brückenaufbau oder hinteren Brückenaufbau und die erste Lage vor der Brücke. Das nehme ich an, das ist richtig. Das ist ein Hinweis von der WS. Denn da kommt das immer wieder hoch. Das sieht aus, als wenn da Echtmetall brennt oder als ob da Feuerwerkskörper drin sind.
Dies wird die Einsatzposition der Wilhelm Kaisen. Mit ihrem Feuerlöschmonitor auf dem Vordeck kann sie 20.000 Liter Wasser in der Minute in die Flammen schleudern.
That was footage from 1983, container vessel Ever Level on fire on the River Elbe. The next step was to think about our Tag der Seenotretter, in English, the Day of the Sea Rescuer. In every year, last Sunday of July, we hold this day. Just one back. And that's normal situations on board. Not possible in COVID-19 times, of course. So the Tag der Seenotretter is the most important day of the year for friends, fans and supporters of our institution. We have open ship events at our stations around the coastline which attract more than 1,000 supporters at many locations. Essential way to engage with people and to build our supporter base as we are exclusively financed by donations. This year, because of the pandemic, the day was put on hold, but instead of cancelling, we decided to move it all online. The KNRM, our Netherlands sister organization, did it in the first days of May, and we did it at the last Sunday in July. So in the weeks before, we asked all our crews to shoot little videos showcasing their daily work. This has given us lots of great footage. And on the day itself, people could examine our ships, station equipment, and meet our crewmen, as you saw before, much closer than usual. They could also visit more than one station in a day, just a click away, without having to travel. We invented a special campaign t-shirt, which supporters could buy and ran a competition to win 10 short sea trips with a rescue unit, once government guidelines permit, as a prize. We don't know at the moment when it will be. You can see the starting screen of our special website for the day with a little thumbnail from every of our stations. One example of the Tag der Seenotretter videos.
auf dem Vormannstuhl sitzen. Dieses Jahr leider nicht.
Karussellfahren? In diesem Jahr leider nicht.
Medizinische Versorgung an Bord? In diesem Jahr leider nicht.
6500 PS Höhe? In diesem Jahr leider nicht. Rettungsübung? In diesem Jahr leider nicht. Bleibt gesund, wir sehen uns im Jahr 2021.
So the title of this video was Not This Year, showing virtual what isn't possible to do on station this year. In total, we had about 65 videos from every single of our 55 stations and some extra content on top. We had videos from just about 1 minute to about half an hour. In total, 4 hours and a half. And on the day itself, we had 40,000 views on our YouTube channel and some extra views on Facebook and so on. And within 2 months after the Day of the Sea Rescuers, we had 500,000 extra views on our YouTube channel. It was a great success. Here you can see the results in social media from the beginning of the shutdown on until today. Facebook isn't dead for our institution. Especially the silver surfers we can find on Facebook, our biggest donators group. And we won on Facebook 13,000 new followers in the last 8 months. That's nearly twice of the group we won in the complete last year. Instagram is nearly the same. So what's next? COVID-19 isn't over. Our next fundraising campaign is Nisrandas to name a new 28-meter rescue vessel with daughter boat after a lifeboatman character in a famous German poem from the times of rowing rescue boats. It's very, very famous in Germany in all generations. It's also in schools today. You have to learn it. And you can see what we do in the first steps since the last 10 days online on our special website, nisrandas.de. We are thinking about a sea rescue podcast. Maybe it will come. And also maybe another virtual Tag der Seenotretter we will have next year. We do not hope so, but we think we are well prepared for it. Last but not least, you can find here my contact details if you have any questions later on. And I will here at the end of the blog for your questions and for questions via email. I hand back to Jakob. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. What an impressive response to an unfamiliar situation, and it almost sounds as if you have managed to turn this crazy situation into an advantage for yourself. Of course, no one wants to have that sort of advantage, but it still sounds like a great job that you guys have done. Well done. Questions for Christian also taken at the end of the block. So we now move on to the third presentation of this block. an introduction to commercial activity at the RNLI commercial, and that's given by James Dumas, who is the head of commercial at the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. So James, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. So my name is James Dumas, and I'm the head of commercial development at the Royal National Lifeboat Institute, and I'm here today to offer a short overview of the RNLI's commercial activity. Now, for the purpose of this presentation, I've assumed a general understanding of the wider work at the RNLI, but I hope to be able to offer you some new insight into our commercial business. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be covering a bit about the background and context in which we operate our commercial businesses, highlighting some of the challenges and opportunities that we encounter along the way. I'll offer a quick overview to our commercial vision, mission and values, and talk a little bit to how these support and align to our charity as a whole. I'll also cover a brief summary of our current commercial model and explain how we've navigated some of the challenges that 2020 has thrown at us, and touch on the priorities for 2020 and beyond. And finally, I'd like to offer a few of my own reflections from the past year as we look to grow our commercial activity at the RNLI. So how have we arrived at our current position? Well, over the last couple of years in particular, the UK charity sector has seen a period of heightened commercial focus as charities look to diversify their product offer and build resilience into their funding models. This has meant that we have seen our competitors' commercial offers become increasingly sophisticated, and along with the growth in digital products, the choice available to our supporters is improving all the time. And we recognise that we must improve to remain relevant and maintain our market share. Internally, there's also been an important step forward for us this year with the launch of our Watch, the RNLI's new strategic framework, which alongside many other elements has focused our efforts on the commercial opportunity. Currently, commercial activity only makes up a small percentage of our total income, with legacy pledges funding the majority of activity. But we have an ambitious plan in place to increase this value and generate a lot more income over the next 5 years. It's also worth noting that in many ways our commercial business is in its infancy, and while successful, we have plenty of work to do before we can claim to have reached our potential. For commercial, we have 3 primary businesses, with the largest contributor to our income being retail, and I'll expand on this a little bit shortly. With the RNLI College and Hotel in Poole campus, which has a primary purpose of supporting our crew training, but it also acts as a valuable engagement and income generating asset. And finally, the organisation has some significant corporate partnerships, which provide valuable exposure and promotion to our life-saving work, as well as growing our commercial income stream. So, how have we got here? So earlier this year, we refreshed our commercial strategy and reviewed our vision statement, helping save lives for a relevant and compelling commercial proposition that exploits RNLI assets and the brand to deliver sustainable, profitable growth. Well, here we have ensured that our commercial activity links to our wider life-saving mission and our fundraising requirements, and that all activity serves to protect and enhance our reputation. We are also acknowledging our obligation to invest our supporters' money wisely and use our assets in the most productive way. Ultimately, we're aiming to deliver sustainable, profitable growth across all of our businesses. So our commercial mission is to deliver increased income for an optimised and diversified commercial proposition, which accelerates supporter acquisition and increases lifetime value. So through this, we aim to engage more supporters who will interact more frequently, spend more money, and ultimately become legacy pledges, therefore supporting income generation across the organisation for decades to come. And our values? Well, here we've simply focused on being true to who we are as an organisation. We want our commercial offer to reflect this and deliver authentic products and experiences that showcase our values and deepen engagement with our supporters. So as I've already mentioned, within our current portfolio, retail is the largest and indeed the most profitable business. It is arguably the channel that is experiencing the most change at the moment, with lots of opportunity and challenges surfacing as we adapt to accommodate shifts in consumer purchasing trends and the macroeconomic conditions. For us, like many others, this year has seen mixed results. We have had exceptional online performance, some 300% up versus last year, but our shops and branches, which are run by an amazing volunteer network, were forced to close for a number of months. and at approximately 80% of our total retail turnover, this has left us with a significant shortfall to make up. So to offer you a quick view of our scale, we operate 173 shops nationwide. Now these are largely located on the coast, in or near our lifeboat stations, but we also have a number of standalone high street stores and a number of museums. In addition to the physical shops, we're lucky enough to have a significant volunteer branch network who generate valuable income through product sales, and these are often inland and away from the coast. And as I've already mentioned, we have a rapidly growing e-commerce business, which allows us to offer an extended range of products, lifting our average transaction price and number of supporter visitors. While we work hard to ensure our shops are profitable, we also recognise the valuable part they play as hubs of the community, and we take care to protect this unique element in our trading approach. Our shops are often the first touch point in our customer journey, and as such are key to developing lasting interactions with our supporters. So how do we support them? Well, in addition to the volunteers who make it possible, we have a small support office team responsible for our buying and merchandising, and a variety of teams who support the wider service delivery. Looking beyond 2020 to the future, our retail focus is centred around improving our experience for our volunteers, supporters and staff. And for us, this involves investment in systems and people, enabling us to make better decisions and deliver a more relevant product offering. We're also exploring a variety of new initiatives to further accelerate our growth, both product focused and experiential. The RNLI is also fortunate to have a range of strategic partnerships who help us deliver our life-saving and fundraising objectives. And working with corporate partnerships is another important focus for us as we move forward. Across our partnership portfolio, we always seek to optimise the value each partner can bring to the charity, and in turn, we can offer them. And with many of our partners support us in multiple ways. If we take our friends at Helly Hansen as an example, this high-value partnership not only provides world-class equipment for our crew, but also support our commercial goals. To do this, they work with us on a number of levels, and the most noticeable link to commercial can be seen through our retail offering, where we stock an exclusive branded range created just for the RNLI. If we look to Ford, they support us commercially for a mix of product and fundraising activity, which they deliver through their UK dealer network. Not only does this activity provide valued income contribution, but it also provides an effective channel for us to deliver our life-saving messaging. And it was through Ford in 2020 that we delivered an exciting water safety campaign, which you can see in the slide above. Tyre Tracks with Ford, where we literally branded our lifeguard truck tyres to print messages in the sand, delivered a valuable life-saving message, which in turn led to additional income being generated through Ford's customer base. From a commercial perspective, we have a significant opportunity to further expand our partnership income streams, and we are actively developing new products and services which take advantage of the ways of working. And it's important we recognise partnerships also support the RNLI tactically, and these are often delivered regionally or locally. And our focus in 2021 is to ensure we have full geographical alignment, delivering both income and supporter acquisition. The RNI College and Pool is home to our lifeboat crew training, and over the year we have more than 2,000 volunteers who take part in one or more of 40 different courses. The crew train using our first-class facilities, which include a learning resource centre, a live engine workshop, and a state-of-the-art sea survival centre. Now, actually, this amazing asset also offers us some incredible commercial opportunities. We primarily focus our efforts on filling the spare capacity not used by our crew, and to do this, we offer a variety of commercial products to the public. And last year, we held over 300 events, including many weddings and private parties. Now, this not only provides valuable income, but again, it also offers a unique engagement experience to the public. Because the college is also a hotel, we can provide accommodation and food and beverage, and combined with our coastal location, it makes a great location for a weekend away. Now, while this asset itself isn't profit generating, the commercial income it generates is growing, particularly at a time where we're seeing a lot more people taking breaks closer to home. But I think we can put the real success of the college down to the experience you receive and the very real close connection to the heart of the RNLI, And this is something that we're looking to replicate in the future across our other commercial channels. So 2020, what a year that's been for us all. Well, clearly the arrival of COVID has had a significant commercial impact and delayed many of our plans as we've closed our shops and college and had to redouble our efforts to keep our people safe. And while the full financial impact of this will not be known for a while, what is already clear is that the ability to be agile and flexible in our offering has to a degree enabled us to minimise the losses we've experienced through the closures. It's also provided us with some valuable lessons and challenge the way we're thinking in a number of areas, not least how we build more resilience into our commercial offer. On a positive note, our commercial successes, particularly online, have provided us with a sharper focus and valuable learnings which we will carry forward. And I've got to say that our teams, whilst a little tired from this year, are generally feeling extremely optimistic about the future. And in some areas, 2020 has actually helped accelerate our development activity, and digital projects are probably being the biggest winner in this area. So looking beyond 2020 into a more positive future, the RNLI has set itself some very ambitious commercial targets, confident that we've got the potential to significantly grow our existing channels, retail, partnerships and the college, but also bring on board new income streams that take advantage of our brand and our assets. And to do this, we've identified 5 areas where we need to focus our resources. The first, and arguably the most challenging, is creating the right environment for commercial growth. Now, in a large, complex organisation where commercial activity is not the primary goal, we realise the importance of this. To achieve our potential, we need to evolve our operating model and ensure we have a fit-for-purpose governance and oversight model. We also need to invest in our people to ensure we have the right mix of skills in the organisation, particularly in more specialist commercial areas such as digital marketing. We need to continue putting our customers first, which for us means taking more data-driven decisions and challenging ourselves to remain relevant. And we need to make sure that our products remain compelling. And finally, we're looking at how we appropriately market our brand to generate more commercial opportunities. We also have a special milestone on the horizon. In just under 4 years' time, we'll be celebrating our 200th anniversary. And from a commercial perspective, this will provide a variety of new opportunities, and we'll be looking to build on our existing product range with unique lines and activities that celebrate this occasion. One area we're working on already is a dedicated 200 range to complement our retail offer. And I've got to say, it's already looking really good. So to summarise, our commercial channels are an important part of our income and engagement strategies and provide our supporters with a variety of ways to connect with the RNLI. We are focusing our efforts on achieving more value for our existing channels, but also have some exciting new developments in the works that complement the RNLI strategy and provide better experiences to our supporters. We have been forced to adapt and adopt our offer at pace this year to accommodate the challenges of COVID, but actually this in turn has produced some positive results, which will lead to stronger growth in 2021, and ultimately a more resilient commercial offer. So finally, I thought I'd share a few of my personal reflections having joined the charity just over a year ago from a commercial sector. I think first and foremost, establishing the right commercial culture in a volunteer-led charity can definitely be a challenge, but it's also one that we're finding extremely rewarding. Good communication and a clear strategic vision has definitely been vital for us, particularly as we're looking for growth and change. And importantly, it's vital that we don't lose sight of the end goal, which for us is focused around supporter acquisition through data-driven decision making. Thank you. And with that, I'll hand back.
Thank you, James. I think that was an excellent overview of the work and the vision of the RNLA commercial. At least I got a very good view of what you are doing and what are your sort of ideas, how you develop that, and it made a lot of sense. Now, thank you for all the speakers for keeping the time well, so that actually means that we have about half an hour left before the break. Of course, if we're not using that half an hour, then we can have the break a little bit earlier. But now is a good time to ask questions, and there have already been a couple of questions. Let's start with those. There's first a couple of questions to Phil. Are the Coast Guard helicopters still operated by Bristow? And if so, do you think this outsourcing is better than operating the helicopters in-house? And there was also another one related to helicopters. I saw recently the UAV drone from Bristow being used for search and rescue with HM Coast Guard. Is this the future instead of helicopters, or will they work in unison in search and rescue operations? Let's start with those two.
Okay, I'm not a such helicopter expert, so I'll give my best knowledge here. So firstly, are the helicopters still operated by Bristow? Yes. The contract has just been extended, and the negotiations are ongoing for the SAR 2G, or the second generation SAR helicopter project, which will be the next contract after the current contract with Bristow. Do I think this is better than outsourcing? Personally, I think it's a lot more beneficial because we can use the economy of scale and deliver a cheaper or more cost-effective service. Because if we had the helicopters in-house, we would not only have to pay for the airframes and the crews, but also organize the whole of the training, the certification, and all the other bits that come with operating a fleet of helicopters. So for us as a small organization, the Coast Guard, this is much better value to have that done by a contractor on behalf of ourselves. And the next question about drones. Yes, we're doing trials quite proactively, not only with small drones, but also with over the horizon, so out of sight drones. Just done some trials in the Bristol Channel, I believe, recently. And yes, that forms part of the future. So we're looking at how we can use drones for searching, for patrolling, and other tasks. But it will not replace the helicopters in the foreseeable future, I don't think, because you still need to have all the capacities of a helicopter, be that winching of personnel or having eyes on scene for certain missions. So I think it's the future, but maybe the very long future.
Okay. There was a couple more questions to you, Phil, so don't switch off your video quite yet. When you're working with other agencies in the search and rescue operations, what is your opinion? Do you work together well, or do you have different techniques? For instance, do the police and customs know the IMSAR techniques, or how do you see that?
Speaking for when we do the capacity building, so working with the organization I talked about earlier in the presentation, usually when we start working with them, they don't know what IMSAR is or what it stands for, and they had no exposure at all to the search and rescue systems and how they fit in. For example, what does the Rescue Coordination Center do and what are they supposed to do and so on. So it is a very new side for them. They are very focused on their prime functions, which might be law enforcement or fishery protection or whatever they do for the main organizations they work for. So what we're trying to do is to open the horizon and give them more of an appreciation where they sit. And then in the workshops and the training, we actually do the training to IMSA and show them where they can find a lot more about the techniques and build those networks that can reach out, for example, to the ANALI or to VISA, which is a search and rescue organization in the British Virgin Islands, or the US Coast Guard, the French Coast Guard, where they can get more support on homing their search and rescue skills and developing that capability. So it tends to start off a bit rocky and then gels quite well because they see why it's important, and they also understand why it's important for their local community to provide that safety service.
Okay, thank you. And then there was one more question about the sort of different agencies, this time about the volunteer organizations or volunteer power, as it said. When you're doing your reviews, how do you take the volunteer organizations, volunteers into account in that?
We've only worked with a few volunteers. We've worked with the RNLI in the UK. So Dave Whitten, who works for the international programs there, has been supporting us. We've worked with VISA, which is a search and rescue organization like the RNLI in the British Virgin Islands, although a lot smaller. And that's the main volunteers we've worked with so far. The problem is to find volunteers that are able to assist and have the time available as well to assist us. So we're open to including them. The projects we run are normally not run by the Coast Guard from the UK, but they're run from the UK government and funded by the government to assist capacity building, or sometimes in cooperation with other governments. For example, in Kenya, we worked with the Japanese government together on the funding for that. So we'd like to get more volunteers involved, but we find it sometimes difficult to get the right people in the first place to make the contacts with. So that's why this is very important to have these forums like this meeting to tell people what we do and get people to talk to us and see what they could contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. I'll let you rest for a while now. There was another question to Christian about the virtual tours. So the question was, who did you collaborate with making the virtual tours, and do you have you found out whether they actually helped you in fundraising, or what was their impact?
Yeah, in case of the Hermann Marwede, our biggest vessel, Helgoland Station, we cooperated with the municipal administration. They did many tours for the whole island, and we could hop on. That was a luck for us. We have other tours. We didn't pay for them. It was a gift to our institution. The topic of fundraising, it's unquantifiable now. We think in general we will see at the end of the year how it helped, because in Germany the last 2 months of every year are most important for fundraising. So we will have to wait a few weeks.
Okay, thank you. There was another question about fundraising. I guess this one actually goes to, I actually think Teresa might answer this one.
I think Caroline answered.
Yeah, Caroline answered in the chat that that there is a fundraising and communication panel biannually organized by the IMRF. But Teresa, do you want to say something more about that IMRF efforts to share good practices related to fundraising and communication?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. So as Caroline said, we do have a fundraising Skillshare panel, which gets together roughly every 2 years. The last one, in fact, was just towards the end of last year. And I think it was reported on at the last meeting. I think it was about September time. So it was at the last European regional meeting that you had a report on that. But we do keep the situation under review. And it's certainly the case that given the particular circumstances that we find ourselves in at the moment, because of COVID-19, all charities are in the same boat, literally, in respect of seeing a challenge to fundraising, or at least having to reinvent their fundraising strategies. So it's certainly something that we will consider having a special discussion perhaps on COVID-19, because as we've seen today from Christian's presentation and from what James had to say about the RNLI, and Mark Dowie, the CEO of RNLI, has put some other suggestions in the chat box. There is quite a lot of people have done a lot of thinking, and one of the aims of IMRF is to share those ideas so that people aren't continually having to reinvent and rethink the same thing. So if there is an appetite for that, we can certainly see about having, setting up perhaps a virtual discussion, which would probably, focus on COVID-19 perhaps, and fundraising and the commercial aspects in this particular challenging period.
Thank you, Teresa. If you're interested in fundraising and issues related to it, have a look at the chat. There are some tips already, some links being shared and some ideas being shared that you might find useful. I think we have exhausted the questions that there were in chat up to this time. If you have any more questions, now is a good time to write them to any of the three presenters we had. And while you're considering your questions, now is maybe also a good time to answer the poll again. The same question as in the previous block. So did you find this section useful? Yes or no? And also a reminder that the block number 4, the last block, there's another link for it. It's in your email. And if it doesn't work, then please, just in case, copy the link that Claire just posted in the chat. But if you have your personal link in your email, please use that. There's one question in chat. I think this goes to James. How did you promote the online delivery and reach such large audiences?
Yes, thank you for the question. So I guess a variety of channels actually. So we have, I guess, our own RNLI channels, which we have sort of commercial segmentation in, and that's for a variety of digital and print mechanisms. But we also work with our partners, particularly to promote our key campaigns and our life-saving activity messaging, and indeed our fundraising messaging. And that's proved to be a real accelerator for reach, and has been a very useful tool. So that's something we're definitely keen to sort of continue and expand in the future.
Okay, thank you. And I just stopped the polling as well. 96% saying this was a useful section for the meeting. Now, if there are no more questions at this point, then we have a 15 minutes longer break than intended. So if you didn't have your lunch during the previous break, now it's still a great time to have it. Or perhaps it was such a short lunch last time that at least the French can continue for a second lunch. We continue at the hour, so in 45 minutes for block number 4. And then we have 2 presentations about the mental health of the crews and the SAR aviation standards. And then we have the closing remarks for the seminar. So 45 minutes from now, we continue for the last session of this seminar. And there's a suggestion from Michael that the polling might be more useful if it's from range to 1 to 5. That is probably true. I'm not sure if we can change that anymore at this stage, but certainly we'll consider it for the next online session that we'll do. Thank you all, and see you in block number 4.